to the March 16th edition of the Tech for Dreaming community meetup event. We haven't had this, I think it was December, we had Jared Gott talking about VR to induce lucid dreams. So it's been a while since we had an event, the first one of 2022. So welcome. Today we're talking about doing experiments within the community. So definitely a fun topic. And yeah, I think this would be a bit of a less structured event, but also kind of fun that way too. It's kind of a benefit of not having a guest speaker running through their slides. We can kind of brainstorm as a community on some topics here. So laying out the agenda, we did the first one already, just settling in and having some intro banter there, so we can check that one off already. I'm going to give an overview of Tech for Dreaming. I think it's always good to provide an overview of what is this community that's hosting this event. So I'll try to keep that pretty short, so we can keep most of the time dedicated to brainstorming what are some fun, impactful experiments we can do within this Tech for Dreaming community. So that's going to be the bulk of the discussion, and then as time allows at the end, we can have an open discussion on other topics beyond that. And I mentioned this event will be recorded. Again, that's for us to be able to share that on the YouTube channel after the event. And if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, there's some pretty good recordings from past events. Like I mentioned, Jared Gott joined recently. We had Benjamin Baird on before, really good discussion with him. Karen Conkley, she actually was the first guest speaker we had. So we've had some good events in the past, and those are all accessible on the Tech for Dreaming YouTube channel. So definitely check that out if you want to catch up. So then on to just a look ahead to some future events here. Today we're going to talk about community experiments. April 20th, also known as 420, planning to talk about cannabis, psychedelics, and their influence on lucid dreaming. So I think that'll be an interesting discussion. It kind of fits into the supplements and substances part of lucid dreaming technology, if you will, ways to increase the likelihood of lucid dreams, in some cases decrease the likelihood. So I think that'll be an interesting discussion on that date. Then also good news, we got Antonio Zadra. He, at least through email, said he's willing to join a future event. I don't know if that's going to be May or June. I've yet to lock down the date, but just know that we got a good guest speaker coming up. He was the author of When Brains Dream, and a very accomplished person in the space. So look forward to him joining us in a future event. So that's a look ahead to what we're planning. And thanks, Sansa, for recommending the outreach there. Then, a few housekeeping items here. If you want to ask questions, you can drop them in the Zoom chat. That's a good way to do it. You could raise your virtual hand within Zoom. And then we'll see how it goes. I think sometimes you could just unmute yourself and interject if you want. That could get a bit chaotic if too many people are doing that, but we can kind of see how that goes too. But in general, good best practice to mute yourself when you're not talking, just so we can minimize background noise, and it just makes for a better experience for everybody that way. That's the housekeeping items. Before I get into the Tech for Dreaming overview, any kind of initial thoughts, questions from people? Gives me a chance to sip my water too.
So I have an initial thing to share with everybody. So Dr. LeBerge, who people probably know, is planning to, so I have it on pretty good authority that he's planning to reactivate the Onaeronautical Society that the Lucidity Institute had, which did these community experiments. He used to do that, where they would talk about it in their nightlight newsletter. But in any event, so I know that's going to start to happen again. I couldn't say exactly when, but I know there's a plan there. So I'll put into the chat the link to their mailing list. So anybody who would be interested, and I'm guessing most people would, in participating in these kind of like, community sort of citizen science experiments, anyways, you might want to, drop your name onto that mailing list.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a really good call out. And
it's super exciting.
Yeah, and like maybe there's a good kind of interplay between them and this community too. So we can think of a way of maybe
absolutely
together. Yeah, and kind of on that note, as far as like initial announcements too, want to give a plug for Jay's podcast with the Lucid Dreaming podcast. I just listened to the most recent episode with Ben Baird. It's definitely worth a listen. So if you're not subscribed to that, I would definitely add that to your podcast rotation. Really good discussion he had with Ben Baird recently.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So
The one before is with Karen as well. So I've been just piggybacking on Tech for Dreaming presenters, and it worked out really nice because I could just expand on some of that stuff, and I think it came out really well.
Yeah, for sure. No, glad.
The one with Karen was great. I was waiting for the one with Ben to get posted, so you must have just put that up
Yesterday, I believe, the day before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the listen. I was telling Jay that it reinvigorated my kind of enthusiasm for the space. Not that I lost that much enthusiasm, but like you can't help but get like hyped up about it when you listen to Ben talk through the space.
Awesome.
All right, so back to the slides. I'm just going to do a brief intro on who I am, just so because I'm going to be running through some slides. You might be wondering who I am. So yeah, I'm Brian. I started this community, it was like March last year, so it's about a year old at this point. Tech for Dreaming. Been a pretty avid lucid dreamer since 2014. Happened after getting sleep apnea resolved, and when I started meditating, had hundreds of lucid dreams since then. Currently work at Aura. So it's a smart ring in the sleep tech space that tracks sleep and a variety of other metrics, including heart rate variability, activity. Was at Fitbit before that, and then Medtronic, and background in engineering before I went to the dark side of getting an MBA and working in product marketing and product management, which is what I'm doing now. And then I started Tech for Dreaming because I'm convinced there's a ton of potential here in the future. If we look ahead 10, 20 years, hopefully before that, I think this space is going to be like really exciting and like I think it's just brimming with potential. And I think tech is a good way to potentially unlock that potential, or that's why we're kind of gathered here to see, how we can kind of make lucid dreaming more accessible to more people. And I was surprised there wasn't a group at that intersection of technology and lucid dreaming, so decided to start the group. So that's a quick background on me. I'm going to give an overview of Tech for Dreaming, and like feel free again to like interject, ask questions along the way. But this overview should be pretty quick. As mentioned, Tech for Dreaming, it's a community focused on the application of technology to make lucid dreaming more accessible. We do that by focusing on devices and supplements, and actually added a third category since last time of software. So I think that could also add a lot of value here too. When we talk about devices, it's things like supplements or things like sensors that can do real-time detection of REM sleep to be able to time some kind of stimulation. Variety of different modalities are possible, yet to see which one is the most effective, and like maybe a combination of things that are the most effective. So a lot of things to explore in the devices space. And then in the supplements, there's a lot of interesting, different supplements to explore here. Galantamine probably being the one with the most evidence to date. So really focus on using devices, supplements, and software to make lucid dreaming more accessible to more people. Less focused on more of those kind of traditional cognitive techniques, like keeping a dream journal, doing daytime reality checks. Less focused on sharing lucid dreaming stories. I think that's interesting, but it's well covered by the more general lucid dreaming communities out there. So again, we're really more focused on the intersection between technology and lucid dreaming.
Laura has a question, I think.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yes, when you were going over the overview, I just realized how some of this could apply to my girlfriend who's blind. She's not here because she's overwhelmed by large like Zoom groups, but lucid dreaming is a passion of mine and tech is a passion of hers. So and I don't know how to, the reality tests I use are mainly visual, and since she doesn't see in her dreams, she's been blind since birth or shortly after. And so part of what I wanted to pick up here is how can we come up with like even not just high tech, but like how can we come up with like oh yeah, that's a good one, Dash. I just saw it in the chat. More reality tests that use more senses. I know that's again less that we're less focused on that, but we're like But that's just a thought.
Yeah. And yeah, like really good thought. Like we should, as we're thinking about these things, think
As
about
you said, more
accessibility.
accessible. I'm like, she would benefit from something like this because a
Yep.
lot of these techniques I use may not be working for her.
For sure.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
Though some devices, I know that, I mean, connecting it back to devices, aren't there some that are vibratory, like tactile? Like isn't there some promotion of a wristband or something that links to an app and will remind you to do reality checks throughout the day with something like that?
I think the ZMAX folks did some work on that, right? I think I remember seeing a paper from them.
Okay, cool.
Karen told me she was reading some paper about like that somebody went through different types of like electrical stimulation, not electrical, but like technical stimulation, like light, sound. And one of the ones that was the most effective, that whatever this was, I don't really know, but they found that I think it was water being shot in like somebody's hand, like with like a little water gun, was like an effective way to infiltrate the dream. So tactile things are probably possible.
Yeah, I think the MIT group too, the dream like dream engineering group there also deals with sense too, if there's certain smells that can influence the dream. So maybe that's another portal, be on site. But yeah, Laura, definitely worth bringing that up as we think about experiments. We can kind of view it through that lens too, what's accessible or not to a broad population. And then, yeah, to kind of like close out the overview, I see Tech for Dreaming being a hub for learning, collaborating, experimenting together. Like I want it to be this place where we can learn together, share the most recent publications in the space, most recent articles and popular press or unpopular press, and just like talk about what's new in this community. Also a place to collaborate with each other. Like if people are working on projects to using technology to induce lucid dreams, I think I want this to be a place where they can find people with the right skill sets that can help their project out. And then on the flip side, people that have skills, but they don't know where to apply those skills, be able to find the right projects for them to add value to. So kind of playing matchmaker between projects and people in that kind of collaboration space. And then experimenting together too. And that's really the focus of this event. Like how can we actually move the field forward with some experimentation here? So I think that's really exciting. There's a lot of uncharted territory here, and I think there's a role for our community to play in this experimentation. This is my last slide in the overview, just a call to action on if people want to help, definitely open to people helping. Yeah, I know, Jay and Dash have been helpful so far, and welcome more people to help out and help this thing grow and make it better each day, each month. Welcome people to follow us on Twitter. That's probably where I'm most active out of all the different various channels. Discord, invite people to check out the Discord server. That's better for just kind of real-time discussion between between events. And I feel like we got critical mass of people in there. We actually got some discussions going in the various channels. Before it was kind of a bit of an awkward silence in there. I was trying to stir up some discussions, but I feel like now we got people that can actually get some discussions going. So best way to join that is if you go to techfordreaming.com. At the bottom, there's a bunch of icons. So if you click on this crab-like icon, I don't know if it's a crab or what this icon is, but if you click on that, you're able to join the Discord server. And I look forward to a lot of discussions in there ongoing. As mentioned, we have a YouTube channel. That's where I'll post this event reporting, and that's where the past event reportings are. And then like future events will be on Meetup, and we have a Facebook group. It's a little bit less active, but it's there. Same with Reddit. All right, I'm gonna pause there if there's any initial thoughts, questions, comments before we get into the discussing brainstorming experiments together. All right. Yeah, it gives me a chance for a Marco Rubio style drink of a water. If people remember that reference, that might be a bit of a dated reference at this point. Not a fan of Marco Rubio, for the record. Opening thoughts. So yeah, this is looking to. I got a few slides here to structure the discussion. We're not intended to kind of set the path forward. It's more to like give some structure around the conversation and kind of progress things forward. Look forward to brainstorming together. I think ideas are better when we kind of build on each other's ideas. So look forward to ideas from the group and brainstorming together. Probably going to be a bit of a loose, open discussion, but we'll see how that goes. And yeah, look forward to hearing what people think overall. Oh, and yeah, after a few, when I was making the slides, I had a few drinks and I was looked up bad clip art for brainstorming. So these are the ones that I found. So you got to bear with me as I build this slide. So these are the bad clip art I could find for brainstorming. So this is the most exciting slide of the deck here. So my objectives for the event tonight, really see this as a place to start to generate ideas for these community studies that we can do together. Not expecting them to lead this event with a well-defined study protocol by any means. Like that shouldn't be the objective. It's more about generating ideas, see what's exciting for the group, and get that conversation started. I also want to leave this event with some clear next steps on how we could progress the discussion and scoping of different studies going forward. So that's really the two things I want to get out of this. Let's generate some ideas, see what's exciting, and make sure we got some clear next steps coming out of it. And then here's a slide. Oh yeah, go for it.
No, I think it's worth clarifying because I see Beth is asking in the chat. The goal of this session, there are no existing experiments that we're proposing and going to do all together. We are trying to come up with good ideas for experiments that can be done by the masses, by people at home, that could yield interesting results, that we could track something or learn something or achieve something. And basically this session is kind of a group brainstorming about creating those experiments or coming up with ideas for those experiments.
Yeah, totally. Good clarification there. And thanks for keeping an eye in the chat. I've been kind of like looking at the slides, but not as much the chat. And yeah, I like the idea of trying to meet in the lucid dreaming world. I actually have that as one of the proposed secondary objectives that I lay out. So yeah, definitely want to talk more about that kind of stuff too. So I think it's something that would be motivating for people to do some experiments, once you're lucid, or there's some kind of shared missions that we could do. Saying there's a lot of really cool stuff we could do around that. I'm responding to Beth's comment in the chat. All right. And then, yeah, just an overview, like, why I think why experiment in this community. There's just a ton left to learn in this space, at that space between the intersection of lucid dreaming and technology. There's academic researchers, in this space, but I think, some of them either lack funding or they're not always able to get funding on some of the questions that might be perceived as kind of weird or fringe or, so there's not always the funding to do this kind of research. And I think there's an opportunity for us to explore this new frontier and really share some experiences together as a community. I think this is a good way for us to kind of engage together, doing these kind of shared experiments. And then why tech for dreaming? I don't think there's another community focused on technology and lucid dreaming. So, why not us, or who else would do it? And I think there's an active community that's going to be motivated to progress the field forward. And we got some pretty frequent lucid dreamers in this group too. I know, Dashiell's been tapped a few times by Northwestern, and I know we got a few other frequent lucid dreamers in the group, which is always a benefit. You're doing lucid dreaming studies to have a few of them in the mix. And then, I think we got a few more of the academic researchers in the crowd here too. So I'd be curious to see how this slide lands with them. But I'll just kind of run through it real quick, top to bottom. I think a natural question we'll get is, we're not experts at running research studies. I think that's okay. I think we can be this kind of front line of exploration and be the group that generates some ideas and directional guidance on things that are worth further exploration. So really, like, a goal I have in mind is to be this idea funnel where we can try out things that, sometimes a little bit kooky, sometimes unexplored, And finding the right balance between having a good enough rigor to have the results be credible. So if we generate any directional guidance or any kind of signal in these studies, at least have these results be plausible. If we don't want to have the studies be really sloppy and uncredible, but I also want them to be easy enough to do at home and with minimal training. Like they shouldn't have to have a technician come to their home and set up a bunch of electrodes on their scalp to do a study either. So finding that right balance between enough rigor to be credible with some of the results, but not too much rigor where it's like difficult for a distributed community to do. So really see it as this kind of funnel into try out a bunch of different pilot studies, and then if there's signal in the study results, then that's when we could collaborate with academic researchers so they could kind of follow up on some of these studies. I don't know if that resonates with any researchers in the crew. And yeah, we can talk more about that as we go here. And then this is outlining, let me walk through here real quick. Yeah, this slide is talking about, like as we scope a study, we should think about, things that are building on existing findings, maybe with a larger sample size, and or exploring new frontiers. I think we could have a whole variety of primary objectives or secondary objectives, depending on whatever study we land on. I just plop down a few things on a list here just to kind of like plant some seeds of things that we can do. I could see a primary objective being around, frequency of lucid dream induction as kind of a primary. And then as Beth suggested in the chat, maybe there's some fun with psi experiments that could be remote viewing. It could be mutual dreams, like try to meet up in dreams with each other as kind of secondary objectives. I think these are, one, pretty motivating, and kind of fun to explore as secondary objectives of something to do once you're lucid. But just imagine the implications if we are actually able to prove something here. It could fundamentally change our understanding of the nature of reality, which I think is just freaking exciting. So I think that's, some of the secondary objectives we can explore, along with things like increasing dream recall, which is fundamental for lucid dreaming, better control over lucid dreams, longer lucid dreams, and that kind of stuff. So let me just, I might cut my slides short to open up the discussion a bit faster.
This one's good.
Yeah, I think this will be my last one, just to like kind of orient people towards like what some of the categories here would be. I think the general constraints, there's a few of them that I alluded to before, where I think it should be accessible and easy enough for people to do at home. I think it's out of scope to have people go into the sleep lab, or at least like maybe there's a small subset of people that can if they're close to a sleep lab and willing to do it. But I think a general guiding principle should be it should be easy to do at home and without the need for really professional setup to be done. And the categories, they map to what I talked about in the Tech for Dreaming overview. I think that the main categories could be devices, supplements, or software only. And I have a couple categories here. It's not a comprehensive, but like what is the potential for discovery? And then what is the kind of accessibility of doing these kind of studies? I think devices have a ton of potential, but that's if you get the targeting right, the dosage right, the timing right, the stimulation type right. There's just a ton of the parameter space that's yet to be explored. And there's not a whole lot of devices that are, that I know that are working at this point. So access to devices is kind of low, but I do think this is a place where if there's somebody in the community developing devices, I think you'll find a willing group of study participants in this community to try out different prototypes that the community members are working on. So definitely want to leave that open as a category. Supplements, I put that in kind of like the medium/high potential. There's been some promising results, especially with Galantamine previously. There's some difficulty on finding a one-size-fits-all solution. Everybody's body chemistry is a bit different. There's maybe some concerns about systemic effects of ingesting molecules. But I think it could be fun to iterate on different collections of supplements or supplement stacks that either work generally or more likely probably just work for certain subsets of populations. So maybe we can find like kind of phenotypes of people that resonate with one certain supplement stack versus another. Like that's another idea. And I think good thing about this, it's highly accessible. You can get a lot of the supplement ingredients online over the counter without a prescription in most countries. So it kind of hits that high in the accessibility category. And yeah, this other category, software only, is definitely worth exploration. So I view this as kind of automating some of the cognitive techniques with technology. Things like embedding reality checks into your daily life with technology, making them more effective. And I think the accessibility on this is really high for these kind of distributed studies. So I'll pause there if there's any, initial
Yeah.
thoughts or questions on this.
I was thinking actually about if we even just starting from looking at the basics, there is a sort of split of categories of what people are trying to do, and of course the biggest one is just becoming lucid. So there's everything that falls into trying to induce lucidity or increase frequency on lucidity or just make it more likely to happen. And then you have everything that happens within a lucid dream, right? So I'm thinking even from the subreddit, like some of the most common questions that keep popping up is, or complaints is, okay, I managed to become lucid, but I wake up immediately. Like I get excited or something. How do I stay lucid? Or how do I extend the dream and not wake up? And the other one is I can become lucid very often, but I can't control anything. So things that affect whatever those sort of cognitive layers that give you one ability maybe to relax and stay in your dream, other things like increasing vividness and things like that. And of course, access to memory and gaining control, which I don't really know if we even have an inclination as to what is it about whatever somebody's psyche, whatever their state, if there's something else that for some people it's kind of by default they have control over their dreams, and some people have to develop that skill, and could be interesting. So those are like the main categories within the basic kind of experiments. I do think there's a reason why most experiments would go towards inducing lucidity, because I think that is still people's biggest challenge. But on the other hand, that's also what's being the most pursued from tech and supplements and science. And so I've heard the complaint that everything about what do you do once you're lucid has been a little bit neglected. So I just wanted to kind of map that out in case people want to think about it in any certain way.
I just wanted to chime in really quickly because specifically on the extending the lucid dreams, that's actually something where there has been research that Dr. LaBerge had done. And I just threw into the chat a link to basically a summary of that research. And the essence of it, as I understood it, was like it's like rubbing your hands or spinning. But basically, this is now just me giving you my theory on why that might be the case, but I think it's like engaging like your motor cortex somehow. So but basically, and the thing is, I absolutely have tried that, and at least I can speak for me, it has worked. I got to the point, it was so frustrating, like I would get lucid, then I would wake up, and the rubbing hands for me is just like, it's like now like a habit. I just start doing that. So just throwing that out there for people, but that link is in the chat if you want to read about that study.
Yeah, to me it seemed more engaging in something within the dream, like the dream content, whether it's really feeling something and maybe that's your hands, or really looking at the details of something. And so I've seen people who say these batch of techniques don't really work for me, or these batch of techniques don't really seem to work for me. This is where I think like, oh, it's still not really one size fits all, and I wonder if there is something to glean about what produces one result over another, and is there something that falls more into universal than other techniques. And of course it's never going to be one size fits all, but there's I don't think that it has been touched since LaBerge really looked at it quite a while ago. So
No, I
Yeah.
agree. I think that's really kind of an exciting tech thing because it's like very practical, and I can imagine that that could get, yeah, like people could be reporting, especially if there was like a structure, in how it got reported, and so that there was some standardized way to say, okay, I think I became lucid at this point. It was within this amount of time or whatever.
Kind of similarly, I think another area for inquiry here is we still don't really have a good idea of why some people have lots of lucid dreams and some people don't. And I think that is really like as a researcher, I think that is one of our big blind spots is we don't really have any good mechanisms for understanding what actually makes people have lucid dreams. And I think this is something that like tech could be brought to bear on. We could have people like upload logs from sleep trackers and correlate that with like how much lucid dreaming they have. We could ask people to kind of report their experiences when they woke up and look at themes in dream journals. We could our lab has done some stuff with like putting a smartphone in your bed and using it as an actigraph, so we could even like distribute an app to do that to people, then look at correlations with that with lucid dreaming. But I think there's a lot of new ways to use technology to kind of look at people's sleep and brain function that I think could be fruitful.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like, well, that's definitely in my wheelhouse as an employee of Aura. I have my Aura hat off right now, but I can definitely speak to some of that. I think it's probably more in this case more of like a retrospective analysis of like maybe there's signals in the biomarkers of like proceeding when a person got lucid. Like maybe it's indicating more of like the phasic REM if HRV is lower, heart rate's higher, as a way of like
Yeah.
seeing if somebody's more susceptible or like maybe like
Or
certain people have different
even just
profiles.
basic kind of sleep stuff. Like, do frequent lucid dreamers have more fragmented sleep? Do they have kind of more slow wave sleep efficiency at the start of the night? Like, there's a lot of hypotheses I think we could test.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think I'm hopeful that there's more EEG consumer devices too. I think some people are probably familiar with Zio from back in the day. There's the Dream headband for a while. I don't know if they're if they're still going at this point.
Yeah, they're still around.
Yeah. But yeah, I think like a combination of like some of those head-based devices and like devices like the Oura Ring, for instance, could help to characterize that better. Totally. And I guess to circle off while I'm off mute, to circle back on like Jay's point too, and I guess Bill's point too, about like some of these techniques in the dream to extend the duration. And hopeful that there's some clues in that we could then apply to technology too. If it's like this, if you need to maintain some kind of like tactile feel, whether it's like rubbing your hands together, like feeling the surface, I know like that definitely works for me. Like maybe that translates into like some kind of device that vibrates subtly to engage, like certain parts of the physiology to like extend a lucid dream, or like maybe it's somehow engaging the same systems that you engage when you're spinning in circles. So like maybe there's like some clues we get from like the more pure mental techniques that can then be applied to the technology space too.
I think it'd be cool to all the different, like, who was it? Bill got at, why does the spinning work, or why does rubbing your hands work? Is it motor? I think that pinning that down a little bit better would be useful, like for that same reason, Brian, that you're talking about. Like if it's motor related, then like rubbing your hands always to me sounds like, well, it can't be just that, right? Like, so if it's motor related, then like rubbing your legs or like some other comparison to like, what's the consistency among a couple different things that work? Is it motor related? Is it interacting with the dream? And then like kind of mess with those a little bit, so it's not strictly these kind of what are now kind of canonical approaches, and seeing if there's little variations that still work.
Yeah, another one that came to mind not that long ago is about using expectations to create a certain result. So people were talking about like, oh, I can't seem to teleport or to fly or to do one thing or another. And sometimes the indirect way can, at least as a theory that maybe is worth experimenting in terms of like in dream content, it's easier to turn around and find a door that can teleport you to somewhere else versus maybe like willing it to happen. or by some other kind of mechanism of magic, and what other sort of ways that we can utilize expectation in order to achieve a goal within the dream.
Yeah, I always want to run that condition too. Like if somebody ran the study and said, okay, I want to compare spinning with something else, I'd say give some people spinning and then give some people spinning and say, we know that this works. Spinning works for sure, and see if they succeed more. And I think for any condition, if you did that, if you added the like, oh, we know for sure, then it would work more. And I think that's manipulating people's expectations more.
Yeah,
Really. And that's a good point in general, like as we scope these experiments, thinking about like what is the right control conditions to apply to, to get rid of any kind of unwanted, influence from other factors like that, like expectation or whatever it might be.
I also like kind of in a meta sense, I think that one thing that could be really helpful is if there was just some kind of like centralized app or portal or something for people to participate in experiments and kind of report their results in kind of a standardized way. I think like one issue is we have a lot of hypotheses about things that we think might work, but we really need kind of like 1,000 participants to like test all of the things that we think might work for different things.
Yeah,
So
totally.
kind of like an app that just kind of allows people to participate in experiments at home and get the data in some standardized way.
Right. And there's different ways I think to get at that. Like there's some software that's designed around that. I'm thinking of Proof Pilot as one example. I'm sure there's other ones out there now too. In the past, we've done some internal experiments at Aura back in the day of things like what happens if you eat ice cream right before bed, or if you take a hot shower like an hour or two before bed. More focused on like sleep improvement or sleep degradation, but in that case, we kind of it was just like internal employees, but we kind of hacked together with Google Forms surveys, sending out reminders with like a WhatsApp group. But yeah, it'd be nice to have that more centralized, so it's like more easy to follow, versus like having them download like several different apps or like fill out a survey each morning. So
I'm not sure how well developed they are, but I think people know it's experience sampling is the like kind of proper term that people are using for it. And in studies where they're like, oh, I want to see what people are thinking about 3 times a day. So you use an experience sampling app and you have it's kind of designed to trigger alerts for participants. And they have some of them set up for proper like signing up for study things. And I think it's cool bringing out what people are talking about in the chat about the food stuff. I mean, I think that's kind of like what Nathan was talking about, is recognizing patterns in sleep. And if you did this like throughout the day too, or you had daily activity and then you had some dietary patterns over time, I mean, that would just be really killer. And I don't know how bad it is to use different apps actually, because what's more likely to occur if you tell everybody to use the same app that they have to download, or if you say, hey, do you already use, Food Nut or some app that tracks food, and do you already use Android Sleep or something, and then just kind of, do you want to give us your data? And then
yeah, maybe it's a case by case basis, depending on like what is the experiment and kind of like the nature of the experiment. If it's nutrition focused, maybe it makes sense to like lean on an existing nutrition app. If not, maybe it's another app. So like, yeah, I think it's kind of case by case.
I kind of like the idea of like, for like, if we wanted to do an exploratory study where like, let's see what predicts if you have lucid dreams, we could just ask people like, hey, could you send us your Fitbit like account archive, and that contains like sleep data, nutrition data, and basically anything you've logged. So if we wanted to do a big association study, that might be a good way to do it.
That's a good idea. Another one that I keep coming back to and I keep thinking about is galantamine. I feel like there is like some hidden clue there about lucidity and what triggers it and the neurochemistry of it. And I wonder if more can be extrapolated from there, either to like what else can we try, or what other changes or similar changes can we make to make it more effective. Because I think in maybe it was in the podcast with Ben, he was talking about like, look, we assume it's the acetylcholinesterase inhibitor effect at work, but it could be some other, or a combination of that and some other mechanisms that maybe it's affecting dopamine, maybe it's affecting some other neurotransmitters. But whatever the hell we do know about galantamine, we should like try to unpack it and try to figure out what another study could be that is worth trying. Maybe that has been done and it's kind of exhausted and that's just the best we have, but I don't know. Seems interesting.
I
Yeah,
wonder
cool.
about galantamine, like there, I remember, wait, what's her name? What was the lady's name? Kristen, I forgot her last, Lamarca.
Kristen, Lamarca, yeah.
Yeah, so she had like 4 different ideas of what galantamine was doing, and yeah, one was the acetylcholinease inhibitor, and another one had to do with dopamine, and like I wonder if you could take supplements that also do or either supplements or something that would stimulate those other components and like compare
Yep.
like if there's other acetylcholinease inhibitors, like are they also doing it? If there's other like dopaminergic or something compounds, are they also increasing lucid dreams? And seeing like if you could figure out what part of that is maybe having the effect.
Right, it's like mapping out the plausible mechanisms and seeing like other different ways we can get at that with different supplements beyond galantamine.
Parsing
like-
out the mechanism.
Yeah, and yeah, parsing out the mechanism,
Yeah.
like if there is another supplement that is dopaminergic but not an acetylcholinease inhibitor, and that increases lucid dreams. And then we have another supplement that's not dopaminergic and it's acetylcholinease inhibitor, and that doesn't, right? Then we see that maybe it's the dopaminergic side of it. And I'm not even sure if that's what galantamine is, but it's just an example.
I get what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because initially I was thinking it'd be interesting to even like kind of add on different supplements on top of galantamine, but like maybe that's not a good first step, for adding on like choline supplements on top of galantamine. Like maybe it's a better first step to try to characterize this better with like what you guys are suggesting as far as like different ways to get at like what is the underlying mechanism, or like get at like the root cause more before like trying to stack other stuff on top of it.
I have another one. What about, is there, or can we make a slow release galantamine? Would that make any difference? What about a delayed release, right? We can put it in a delayed slow dissolve capsule and let it go to the intestine or something. I don't know if that's safe, but I have no idea. But maybe not waking people up could result in give you a better result. Maybe not, because wake back to bed is very successful. But the challenge with me with galantamine has always been falling back asleep. So,
Right, that's the same for me. Yeah.
So I wonder if there's ways to take galantamine and improve it. And that could be interesting.
I just want to be clear, Jay, that you're saying, you didn't say, can we find that? You said, can we make that? So you want to,
yeah. Yes, I did say that. But I also said, can we find that? Does it exist? Maybe, probably not. But I mean, to make that and then put it out in the world would be quite an endeavor for all.
We'd be a pharmaceutical company at that point.
Yeah.
They do have they do have some pretty good contract manufacturers. I don't know how good they are, but there are some that exist where it's like 2 years ago, I was thinking about exploring the supplement space. I didn't do it, but there's not a lot that agree to do galantamine because it's a like prescription drug for Alzheimer's. It's like some of them are not willing to do it, but some of them are. And like those same ones do dabble in like the extended release or like having different kind of like formulations. I think it's plausible. It's probably not easy to do though, but I think it's, there are these kind of contract manufacturers that could help with that.
Oh, extended release galantamine. Oh snap.
Yeah. Maybe we could all, like some of us who are interested could pitch in for a batch. I don't know like what the smallest batch size would be, but oh, you found something?
Right. I think so.
Oh yeah.
I'll post the link, but we'll see. This is
Yeah.
only as a scientific thing, but
So-
still.
It's got to be like 6 hours extended release. Is that possible? Do pills do that?
I bet they
Well,
could.
to answer your question, Dash, I know there's extended release stimulants for people with ADHD, so they can concentrate all day in school if they're like, a kid or a teenager, for instance. So, and that wasn't around like 20, 25 years ago, but I know it's around now. So if it works, I don't know much about pharmaceuticals, but I think if it can work for ADHD stimulants, it can work for galantamine.
Just to clear on this, I mean, I think that it's not necessarily exactly extended release. I'm not so sure this would be the way to go, but just to add to the conversation, I think what you're talking about is more like a release on the clock. You know what I mean? So these extended release things are usually, like, I think for ADHD, with Ritalin or whatever, things like that. It's so that, like, it's releasing little bits over time. It's at a kind of I think a more or less constant amount. Maybe there's different little tiny litto spheres inside that maybe dissolve at different times. But it seems like if you were really even going to do something like that, you'd want it to, for the average person to, like, dissolve and get into your system at like 3:30 a.m. But I would say it's probably, the other thing interesting with galantamine, for instance, would be to test maybe techniques that that might help you stay asleep, or go back to sleep, I should say.
Well, that's good too for studies that they do. Like that's an issue in a lot of studies, like the lucid dream studies, going back to sleep. So it'd be useful for that as well.
Maybe something like L-theanine or something that's more kind of calming for a person could be a good one to have in addition to galantamine.
Or like a protocol that somebody does. I mean, there might be just things like certain, like relaxation techniques, different things that, like, if that was just part of, like, the plan, that you're not just going to wake up, but you're going to do this particular thing and do this particular, whatever the exercise might be.
Right.
I think you can just buy capsules that are like delayed release, or all these and then just like you could just fill them. I'm just looking at stuff like that. Sorry for
Yeah, this was one of the thoughts I had.
That would probably be better if you're just delaying the release of the payload for 6 hours. You don't want to, like, gradually release it, because then you could disrupt deep sleep earlier in the night if you're releasing this acetylcholine or increasing the concentration. I don't think you want to. It just has potential to be more disruptive if it's constantly getting released versus, like, just timing the release at the more REM rich parts of the night.
Yeah.
This I would try, because the waking up in the morning to take the galantamine is a little bit frustrating. So if you just pop that in some kind of a capsule that didn't release it until 6 hours, and you could just take that before you went to sleep. That's interesting.
I guess kind of going back to this question about, like, okay, can you figure out the mechanism by which galantamine is working by? I think there's, like, other things that you could do related to that too. So, like, one thing is potentially nerve stimulation. Like, so if we think that galantamine is working on neuromodulators, you can also just, like, stimulate the vagus nerve and get changes in neuromodulators, or do a different kind of brain stimulation, like basically from there to there. And that also acts on different neuromodulatory systems. So I think that would be another way to kind of get at some of those mechanism questions. I don't know, I kind of personally like the kind of, like, electronic systems where we're just like, okay, we can program them to give each participant a different thing, just because I think that makes it easy to do an experiment. But
I keep thinking about the device. It was called Think, with the not with the K. The thing amazing about that one, it was they had custom electrodes, and they had basically a tiny device that was stuck on the electrode and could just, like, sit on your head without really, like, having to wrap around it, all that. And it was stimulating, I think, the vagus nerve or somewhere around there. So yeah, and it was, they had, like, an app, and it was programmable, and some, at least on their end. That could be very interesting too.
Yeah, there's one out now called Apollo, which does something similar, but with like peripheral nerve stimulation.
Yeah, I got one right here, the Apollo Neuro. Yeah, so you can wear this on your ankle or wrist.
What's the idea behind it? What does it do?
It's supposed to kind of do peripheral, so the idea is that kind of like you do specific
Oh.
patterns of kind of vibration, and that stimulates sensory nerves, and that in turn kind of induces relaxation through changing neuromodulation. It sounds kind of sketchy, but there's some evidence for it. The problem with the Apollo is that it's all proprietary, so you can't really tell it like, okay, come on at night. But also, I mean, I've been working on a project that's like an open source Apollo clone, so like it's pretty similar. It's pretty easy to do that kind of stimulation however you want because it's just vibration.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I would wonder like what devices are available for it. Like yeah, Jay, you mentioned Think. They have these I don't know if you've seen these patches. They have these Zing patches now. It's from the same company that Think had, but they're like a single use patch that you put on. It's like maybe that's a more accessible way, but like you still have to wake up and put it on. So it's still not that user friendly if you're trying to do it in the middle of the night.
Nathan, I wanted to ask you more about this enteric coding. Is that something that does also require a lab, or is that like a possibly DIY thing that can be done?
Let me see actually. It's normally something that's done when you manufacture a supplement, but because it is literally just a coating that's placed on the outside, I imagine that you could do it in a DIY situation pretty easily too, as long as you could actually buy the enteric coating.
I also wonder if there's if there's any potential risks of like, oh, let's say you can take any capsule or any pill and put it in a slow dissolve capsule that basically will give you a delay release. But does that mean that it's going to be absorbed elsewhere, like in the intestine instead of the stomach? And is that a problem with some specific medications? Like, I don't know enough about that I'm like, sure, I can delay it, but does that mean it also behaves differently because I delayed it?
It's generally not a safety problem. Like it's like, so usually enteric coating is used for something where it would like irritate your stomach if it dissolved into your stomach. So you only want it to go into your intestine. But yeah, the only issue is if you have a really high dose and it's intended to be time delayed, and then something goes wrong with the slow release and you're getting a huge dose all at once. But that's not a coating. That's like you're making, yeah.
Because it's funny, I was looking for that kind of a solution when I had a medication I had to take before sleep that was for some reason waking me up at around 4, and I'm like, if I could just delay it, take it before sleep, but have it delayed until like the morning or something, then that would be perfect. But alas. So that's interesting.
Do we actually know that galantamine is safe to take on a regular basis?
Well, you can develop a dependency to it, can't you?
There's a pretty long half-life for galantamine. I want to say it's like maybe 8 hours or something like that, where it takes a while to clear out of your system. So it's definitely something where you wouldn't want to take it on consecutive nights or that often, where you like maybe you want to take it at max 2 times a week. I don't think there's been a whole lot of research on, like those kind of effects.
Seems there is the constant recommendation from everyone not to do it every single night, like no consecutive nights. So yeah,
I wouldn't do any of the things that we're talking about every night. I wouldn't do electrical stimulation every night. I wouldn't do a wake back to bed every night. I wouldn't do any of these. Just
why wouldn't you do electric stimulation every night, for example?
I think that these are all generally sleep disruptive. I think we're like, by definition, right? It's kind of hard to avoid that.
Well, some more than others for sure. electrical stimulation, again, unless it wakes you up, it has at least the potential to be subtle enough and maybe affecting one or another system that would modulate, your how you're sleeping or how you're dreaming or your level of lucidity, without necessarily, because you could become lucid just spontaneously, and that doesn't imply, not to me at least from my experience, doesn't imply that your sleep is worse. In fact, most of the nights I lucid dream, unless I had to do a lot of crazy techniques for it, like waking up and disrupting my sleep, that sleep is better than normal sleep in most cases, or at least it feels subjectively like that. So I don't know, maybe it comes at an expense of something, but that remains
No,
to be
that's
figured
not
out.
what I was getting at. I mean, I agree with you that there's no reason to think that just having a lucid dream is disruptive to your sleep. And if you can get the right stimulation balance to where I have this headset and I never wake up and I get this, proper amount that gives me a lucid dream and keeps me asleep, then that is great. I guess I was thinking more about the tools that we're currently using and playing around with. I don't know that is where it's at yet. Like I wouldn't use any of our electrical stimulation devices every night. I'm also open to the idea that I think that there's a difference, at least right now, from natural lucid dreams and the ones that we're inducing, and it's I kind of wouldn't use any device that tries to manipulate my sleep every night. I think some of them help, but I think that just letting it run its course, for the majority of nights is probably a reasonable idea.
It's a safe bet. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think it's a good question to link of before we're, really diving into all this galantamine stuff and thinking about whether that's a good idea in the immediate sense, like should we all be playing with it, and also in the longer term sense, like do we want galantamine to be a really great induction method, or is it more, are we, even if we think is it a quick fix, and do we want to invest in like other procedures in a different way?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think lucid dreaming is still a fringe movement, and we want to make sure that we get more people interested in this and giving people the perception that, oh, you just take this pill and then you can lucid dream. When, I think the advantage of lucid dreaming is that you can sort of generate it yourself, unlike a psychedelic or other states. And galantamine, I don't know, like we don't know. I mean, sure, even if you take it 2 or 3 times a week, do we know what happens if you do that for like a couple of years? Just like I think safety is very important. And the perception of the outside world for this community, we should keep in mind, that it's like safe, and not just like, let's get more people into the lucid dreaming state, but let's also get them there in a safe manner.
Totally. It's a good point. And like any study we do should be run through that safety filter of what we think is, reasonably safe to do. And I think it's, thinking about, I agree, like a lot of these things we don't want to do every night. And I think that can be baked into any kind of study design where it's, the participant group, maybe it's like once a week or twice a week max, they do it. And then they have these off nights where they can kind of taper down from the effects. Cause even like the night after having galantamine, maybe there's still lingering effects, after that first dose. It's like having some space in between makes a lot of sense too. Or like, anyways, I think it's an input into how the studies are eventually designed too.
Yeah, galantamine gives me restless sleep. So I don't know why, but it's, whatever it's doing, it definitely comes at a cost, even the first time around. So all the more reasons to also try to find alternatives and other supplements potentially, or other techniques or methods.
Has anyone tried huperzine A, which is sort of the Chinese equivalent to galantamine?
Didn't really work for me.
Yeah, I didn't know it. Not like it didn't work like galantamine did.
Or Brian, have you tried alpha GPC, which is supposed to like make it even more likely to have a lucid dream if you combine? The thing is, like, I'm like, okay, at this point I'm taking so many pills. I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? So it's like I'm always very careful. But apparently, if you combine alpha GPC with galantamine, then the probability of lucid dreaming induction even increases. I don't know if anyone tried that reliably. Is it safe to combine this? I guess, right?
Yeah,
quick
I've
question,
mixed and matched a few of those before. And like one of the things I kept coming back to is like it's difficult to isolate all these variables. It might be that I was coming off a night of bad sleep and I had like REM rebound, or like maybe I had a few beers before I went to bed and I still did this. It's like it's kind of it's going to be a general, you know, kind of difficulty doing any kind of study is like how do you isolate the variables to only the things that you want to test. It's like keeping a lot of the lifestyle things consistent. So for me, it was kind of like difficult to track differences between like if did I add you know the alpha what GD GCD.
GPC,
Yeah.
or choline,
Yeah, there's a few
supplements.
a few of those that, you know, I've tried to like stack in different ways and I didn't really notice a whole lot of difference between them. And I think part of that is like there's probably a lot of noise in the signal. It's difficult to tease out signal from noise sometimes. But I think it's worth exploring. I think some of those can be pretty complementary. Like there's, I think vitamin B6 is good for dream recall. So I could see that playing well with.
That's very safe, I think. Vitamin B6, yeah.
So like, I think there's, you know, like some pretty reasonable things to combine and expect a positive result.
I think one thing kind of with that, like I think one thing that kind of like really helps with that is you really want to have like a lot of subjects. And so like one thing our lab did, which I'm kind of curious about experiments if we can do again, is like we actually made an app and we're seeing if this technique can help you have lucid dreams. And we got like a few thousand people to sign up. And then we were able to get enough data to kind of deal with some of those confounds just from that. So I think that is potentially a really promising thing if we're thinking about techniques to induce dreaming, thinking about things that we could distribute it as an app or like with a minimum of equipment that we have to send out so you can do like thousands of participants and anyone who's interested in lucid dreaming can try it.
Your app is only on Android, right? Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to suggest is, you know, is there a way for us to help collectively get a you know, cross-platform version out and then promote it, you know, and try to get more people on that and collect data and see how well that works and find ways to improve it, perhaps.
Yes, so that's actually something we've been talking about within our lab just recently. Is one idea is making a web-based version of the app which could run on like any device and potentially incorporate some input from like the onboard accelerometer or a Fitbit or something, but mostly just be able to run on any device. And we haven't actually done anything on that yet. We're just thinking about it, but I think that would be an interesting avenue.
Nice.
Yeah, totally. And good point on big sample sizes too. I think that's the right goal for this group, where, you know, hopefully this time next year we have, you know, 10x the number of members and we can, you know, be this kind of like feeder into these kind of studies of having a bunch of like willing and able study participants. So, you know, I'm hopeful that this group will grow to be that over time.
I can talk about some of the ideas I had, which are
Yeah.
does not have to do with supplements. But one of the things I was working on in like December was a Chrome extension app, a Chrome extension that would put, specifically what I was doing was it would put weird tweets in your timeline, and it gamified the process of like, if you recognize that tweet was weird, you reality check to it, you do like some sort of click, I think like it was like an R, press R and then click on the tweet, and you would get a point if it was a reality check or it was a dream sign tweet. And it was like gamified, so like you would have like a dashboard, and I didn't make a leaderboard yet, but like a leaderboard, so it's like social, because I'm very interested in like the community and like, well, a few things I like about this idea. I know it is more like a little more cognitive, which like it's not super techy, but it's like I think community is really helpful in lucid dreaming. When I was doing Chicago meetups we would do games that were competition throughout the week about, it sort of had to do with like how many reality checks you did that week, but not exactly. But it led to more lucid dreams for everybody. And as well, like when I had more friends who were practicing lucid dreaming with me, we would ask each other like, oh, could this be a dream? And we'd reality check. And like, it also made us have more lucid dreams. And I even had lucid dreams that were triggered by events like that. Somebody saying in the lucid dream, oh, this could be a dream. And I reality check, and it is a dream. So I think that's something that hasn't been explored. It doesn't hurt you. Like, I feel like it's really good because it's also, I feel like it's a very healthy thing to build that mindset, more than just for lucid dreams. I think it's a kind of a holistic mindset of like being aware of your surroundings, questioning your reactions to things and stuff like that. But and then okay, so I think, and then I don't know if I mentioned this part, but I feel like the competition of it is interesting. It adds this extra layer that of like a motivation, which I also am interested in looking at in this other study idea I had, but we could just talk about this one for now. So yeah. I have like an example of what, like here, I had tweeted it before. I tweeted this twice. So here's one example. I don't have a demo to show because I think it's buggy right now, but like it would put weird tweets in your timeline. And here's two links to two different screenshots I had of these tweets. And when you click on them, it like something would happen and you'd be like, oh, you win. But I don't have a video of that.
Yo, this is genius. Oh my God, this is awesome.
Let me share my screen here. So this is wait, are you able to see the tweet?
Oh, I see the
We're in your DMs.
You're in the DMs.
I'm a bit of a Zoom noob, which is kind of weird during the pandemic, but we use Google Meet a lot more. All right, this should be showing the
no,
something.
showing your message.
oh no. Oh my God.
So
All
while
right.
he's trying to figure that out, can I ask you something, Dash? So
Yeah.
This is great. It's just such a cool idea about like inserting the tweets in school. So could you though, like, have a Chrome extension that manipulates the text on any page that I'm on? Like, could you just kind of scramble up some words every once in a while on my browser?
Yeah, it could do all sorts of stuff. I just am a big tweeter, so
Yeah.
I was starting with the tweets, but a Chrome extension can do anything. The more sites you want to like manipulate, the more you have to like request for like.
Yeah, I'd have to give you full access to like do whatever you want on my browser, but that's cool.
Well, like, either I think you can like you as a user could like download it in maybe a special way where you don't have to do this, but if you go through the Google Chrome, like the App Store, you have to get permission to the more sites you want to change, and
Okay.
they may be weird about that, but especially because they may be like, oh, you're trying to like fool people, like, and they don't really get it. But you might be able to get around that if people just like download the app directly. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, because mine is it's like it's less community based as yours. Like you kind of need the Twitter thing is nice because it gives you this sort of like point system and all that. But I'm thinking of like more subtle, just kind of disrupting people's typical experiences, like where I might just be reading a paper for work and then all of a sudden the text starts to like kind of wobble around, and then that might make me question things, which is also, I think, interesting.
I like that idea. I have to say, I also like your idea, Dash. I like the idea of things being social. And also the other thing, Dash, I really liked about your idea was that it was fun, because I think a lot of times too, I mean, I'm just now speaking personally, but I could sometimes get like a little too serious about it. And, it's mindset is obviously rather important, and it's sort of like, I think that is why it helps with other people, because people can keep things a little more light. But I love the idea of a randomly scrambling some text on a web page. And also, I have to say that reminds me of some research that Jonathan Schooler did on mind wandering. This is several years ago, but he was researching, mind wandering, and it was a very clever experiment, and it involved presenting text that you would read, sort of sequentially, and then every now and again it would start to get, just basically make no sense, and you would like keep pressing a button, I believe, to like advance the text, and then if you just, were like mindlessly pressing the button, didn't catch that, no, the text has sort of gone off the rails somewhere. It was a very clever way of like testing that. So that's what you're suggesting, Remington, sounds a little bit similar.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. That's cool. I didn't know about that. So.
Cool.
I think Julia has a question.
To Julia too.
Yeah, thanks. I actually have a comment. I think I have heard a similar idea about socially engaging so that you get more lucid dream, but kind of like without tech, not necessarily. I know this is tech for dreaming, but it was about wearing a t-shirt that's going to say, ask me if I'm dreaming. So in a sense, someone is going to prompt you to do a test check right there and then. And so that could be an easy experiment. You go to somewhere public, a specific place, and stay there for 10 minutes. I'm just thinking in terms of experiments so that it's easier to like lay it out, wear a t-shirt, and you do this certain amount of time and see if you get more spontaneous lucid dreaming that week without any other techniques or anything like that.
Yeah. I like the idea. Maybe that's a good idea for a Tech for Dreaming branded shirt where it says, "Are you dreaming?" with a little mini logo.
Yeah, I have to say it's not my idea, so I don't think we can brand it. This is from Daniel Love. He has a YouTube channel, and he suggested this in one of his videos. So we'd have to give him credit.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I see Craig has his hand raised too. I'm going to sneak in one comment about the Chrome extension before going over to Craig, though. I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's fair game where it's using this kind of lightweight technology to automate these kind of reality checks. I like the idea of scrambling it too, and like maybe this is a good one to start with because it could be the means by which we figure out like how do we collect data for like how frequently people are getting lucid. I can imagine having a baseline period where we just get used to like reporting, okay, I had a lucid dream on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but not the other times. So it kind of helps us kind of build that muscle of like logging lucid dreams in some kind of baseline period. And then we could work on this Chrome extension and then have a period where like, okay, everybody installs the Chrome extension and see how that lucid dreaming frequency increases as we kind of learn to log our lucid dreams together. So like this could be a good one to even start with before getting into like things like extended release galantamine. It helps us kind of like think through how we structure this stuff to begin with. So yeah, Craig.
Hey everybody. I had some comments on a lot of things. Loving the discussion here.
Yes.
One thing that I worked at the Lucidity Institute with LaBerge and designed the Nova Dreamer there. We did try install a few surprise checks during your day, which was good. I mean, some of you might know about the PEST, the PEST. It's more or less a fancy vibrator at that time on a random timer. But more recently, and this could be like implemented, or I could actually set it up this week, that leading groups, I did that with something like a cross between Danielle's tweets, but where I just would send pager messages on either a fixed timeline, an automated timeline, or get my dream team member, because I lead groups, to send each other ones that they're intuitively best a couple times a day, and then you get the social aspect, which I agree with Danielle, that's a very smart aspect. Competition may or may not, I don't know about that, but definitely social.
Yeah, maybe it's like a friendly competition. And I'll have to look up, I think I heard about the PEST recently. So like I was asking about if people have seen the totem device that the Eurex app is planning to release. And somebody replied to that tweet about the PEST device.
That was probably me.
Okay, yeah. Nice.
In our lab, we actually did something kind of similar where we had an app that people used on their phone and it did something similar. I think one of the interesting things we learned from that is that it didn't work all that well. And I think a really interesting research question is kind of how do we make reality checks work better? Because I think often the generic way of doing it doesn't work that well. And I think one thing, like my hypothesis is that kind of sometimes you're training the wrong things. Like sometimes you're kind of just training people to like poke their hand and see if it goes through, when you really want to be training their like metacognition. Like you really want to be training the cognitive skill. And I wonder, I think that's an interesting experiment to look at. Like, are there better ways to train that cognitive skill by kind of do like maybe with the Chrome extension, like doing kind of just subtle, unpredictable distortions while you're using your computer or something, and you have to say like, did something just happen?
Yeah, that's a good call. Making it like, so you don't want to like wobble text. You want to like kind of just really subtly do it, and you want to have somebody like really actually reflect on, you know, the situation and whether that was something.
Like my
Well-
hypothesis is that you want them to really kind of orient and kind of think about their thinking, and that's the important part more than like, can you read the text?
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess that's what like with the ones that I did on Twitter, they had like a context, but it was just like a little off. Like where it would be like, oh, did this, like they caught me by surprise, even though I wrote them. I kind of forgot some of them, but like yeah, they would be things where I might just be like, oh, did this person like lose their mind a little bit today, or did this person really like just mention me? One of them was Elon Musk saying follow Dash Farkas on Twitter, but so like things that are like where you would react like what, like you have to catch yourself where the context is there, right?
Like you want it to be something that makes you wonder if you're going crazy, basically.
Exactly.
And then, yeah.
You're right. Sorry, go ahead.
Like even subtler things too, like that some of the best lucid dreamers I know, like they reality check every time something anxiety inducing happens to them, right? So even something that's just like realistic, but like your first reaction isn't to react with anxiety, it's to react with a reality check. So yeah, what were you saying, Remy?
Well, and that's consistent with what I was going to say too, which is that your tweets almost might work perfect for this, because when you bring in other people, the unpredictability makes a lot more sense. Like the text on the screen, if it wobbles, it's like, well, text doesn't wobble on my screen, so I kind of know that's it. But somebody reacting strange, like you never really know how other people are going to react. So it's always plausible, like you said, oh, maybe they're losing their mind or something. So like if somebody tweets something weird, I can go, I don't think that's right, but I can I'll probably legitimately think about it every time, because people are weird and they get weirder. And so, yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's really cool.
Also with text, you can do like AI generated text. Like AIs are really good at creating weird text in weird ways.
I tried to make a GPT-3 do this. I kept being like, okay, GPT-3, write a tweet that I might read in a dream. And GPT-3 didn't understand. So we would have to fine tune it a little bit.
And if you do that, you need to make sure that you tell me if it was AI generated. Like if I go through a page and I never catch it, you need to say like, hey, that wasn't real or something.
Right.
So I don't
I was
like
thinking
learn all this
right.
garbage.
I was thinking like at the end of a certain time frame, you would go and you would see which things you missed, right? Or like, yeah, and the ones you catch, you would know, and the ones you missed, it would tell you like in a certain time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, yeah,
One
you'd be
kind
looking at
of like one software comparison that we could borrow ideas from is it's called Hawks Hunt. So it's this anti-phishing software. We at least use it at work, where in the email they send you fake emails, and then you have to label it, you know, is this a fake email or not? And then you get like clarification and like, yeah, that's a fake email. You get 5 stars or whatever, however many points. But then if you don't get things, it has like a summary of like things you missed at the same time too. So I'm just mentioning that as like maybe there's ideas that can be borrowed from that existing solution in like a different domain, but like similar kind of use case.
What was that again? Hot sun?
Hawks Hunt. I'll put it in the chat.
I want the artificial intelligence to tell it, hey, could you come in my dream tonight and give me a cue?
Yeah. And there's I think a good overarching point is not all dream checks are created equal. Like that's something that definitely a point that I took away from Jared Gott's presentation last time about this kind of unexpected consequence of dissociation after people were in this VR flying experience for a while. They felt like that produced like really good reality checks because the person was in a dissociated state. Not that I'm suggesting that we put people in dissociated states to get better reality checks, but yeah, I think putting some thought behind what is a good reality check versus a, you know, kind of a dumb reality check that doesn't really like engage you to like really question if you're dreaming or not. Like, yeah, like in a way you almost have to like really believe that, hey, this could be a dream versus like going through the motions of like looking at your hands and that's
There's
it.
actually a lot of indication that VR could work in different ways, and while it's still a limited access kind of a device, it's one that a lot of people already have. I mean, I wonder if there's a way to figure out what would be an experiment that could be run with VR, what kind of experience or app could be done for VR that could somehow help with that, but I don't know.
Yeah, Brian, what you said is really important. Actually, I wanted to say the same thing or a similar thing, but like the quality of the reality check is what matters, right? Especially for people who are beginners and who haven't experienced a lot of lucid dreams. It's just very easy to just do a lucid dream check or like a state check and then just like don't really do it in a critical way, right? Or don't really question yourself. So I don't know if anyone has ideas about that, but I think like sort of like breathing, right? Everyone knows how to breathe, but like it's like the quality of breathing also matters, right? And like to actually breathe really good is really difficult. And I think the same with state checks is the same thing. It's like it doesn't matter how often you do a reality check. It's like really like that you're actually like you said, like you're actually questioning yourself whether you're dreaming or not. Like
Yeah,
any tools around that would be helpful. Yeah.
I think many people have probably had the experience, and I think Nathan was getting at this, maybe because I've heard you describe it before, Nathan. You said that some studies like people will do you can get people to do reality checks in your experiment, and then what they do is they report just like dreaming about failed reality checks and dreaming about putting hands on things. So if you get somebody to just do this all day, then they dream about doing this, or they associate this with I'm awake, and so they dream about going, I'm awake, and so. Yeah, it does need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're trying to brute force it. Like, I guess it works too, right? You're trying to brute force yourself into the dream by just like repeating it so often that you'll just do it habitually during the dream state. But I think it's way more effective to just like actually, and that's very difficult, and like would be good to have more insights about that, because it's if it's not truly random, then like your mind will ignore it easily, right? So it's really difficult to like randomly, authentically, like, okay, really, okay, this could be actually a dream.
I think you could give
yeah.
I think you can have a condition. I think you could have a condition where you tell people like one group doesn't get told to think deeply and one group does get told to think deeply on it. But I think the issue is that, like you're kind of alluding to, people will get tired of thinking about it. Like the other thing is you have to make sure that people actually are doing that. And even myself, I know that over time, it requires a lot more energy than it seems. And so, yeah. Enforcing that is difficult.
Right. It's a little bit like meditation. Some people just sit there and like still think, and it's like, how can you step out of thinking and actually be in a meditative state? It's actually difficult. And so I think the same thing with like lucid dreaming, which is a nighttime version of meditation. And I think that's really important because I see a lot of different reality checks, like a whole list, but like where's actually like the quality of it? Like and I don't, we're all trying to figure this out, I guess, but like sometimes myself as well, I just do it, but like it's kind of useless if you do it in a way where it's just like you're skipping over it, or yeah.
You need maybe a feedback mechanism or a reality check that is actually more elaborate than a half a second action.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Requires more intention, that you have to complete a few steps in order to actually be sure that you're awake. And you have to think through it.
Or set up a situation where people can actually get a different answer. I don't know if that makes sense, but without dreaming, like I think that's kind of what Jared's VR setup was sort of about. It was like getting people to ask themselves if they're dreaming in actually weird scenarios. But the issue is still that you're coming to the conclusion, like, yes. So maybe maybe it needs to be a different question, kind of like, you know, of just something that requires you to check things, and there are two possible answers that you could get. Sorry, Doug.
In the Chrome extension idea, or like something along that lines, like you can kind of do that because, you know, you can click on a tweet that's weird and it's not a part of the game, right? You and I think you even like lose points if you do that. I think that's how I had it, right? And you get points if you get it right. But also in my experience with the breath check specifically, even if I do it habitually, like it still works because it's not like my brain making it up. It's like based on really feeling my breath. So I've had a lot of lucid dreams based on like habitually doing a reality check.
Yeah, I think it works. I think for some people,
I think one thing that like I was thinking about kind of in addition to the quality of the reality check, I think another challenge is like how much does it transfer to when you're actually asleep? And I think like from like just when I've observed, it seems like there's a lot of individual differences there. Like I think there's some people who can be great at doing deep reality checks while they're awake, but then when they're in REM sleep, they just don't do it. I mean, I think that happens to me actually. I've had hands sticking through other hands. I'm just like, oh, that's normal. Like, and so I feel like that's another barrier is how do you actually kind of get the person's is there, or can we do something that helps people engage that cognitive function while they're asleep? Because I feel like that's another stumbling block for reality checks.
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Jay.
Okay. You know, I wonder how many people even do reality checks tied to their dream signs, right? Like use triggers that are more likely based on your dream journal to appear in your dreams to begin with. And again, yes, people who just make the habit of trying to poke their hand with their finger generate that habit in a dream, but it was just a repeating, you know, mindless habit. Where if you do reality checks based on various dream signs, people you see, the noise you hear, some kind of, you know, object or something like that, it might have a different impact. Or I'm also thinking about something like, you know, I think it was a good suggestion about throwing off the results. So if you have an app that's like a magic 8-ball and you're like, am I dreaming? And you shake it, and then the result 9 times out of 10 is no, but the 10th time is yes. And then it says, oh, wait, I'm not sure. And then you have to do another reality check or something like that. Just, you know, add a little chaos into the order and make them do a double take, but not every time. Would work.
Yeah, I guess just the thing that I like worry about like with all of this is like dreams are just so bizarre anyway, and like normally we don't notice, and that is the thing that kind of makes me wonder about the logic of reality checks and whether we need some way to augment it while you're asleep. Is that it just seems that many people just cannot be surprised by anything or notice anything out of the ordinary when they're dreaming.
Yeah,
So
that's
do we
piggyback on that, Nathan? It's Craig here. Sorry for no picture today. Not in the
Go for it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think could be really useful there is this is just a pondering idea. I've done it personally, but I haven't really done any experiments right now, is kind of a joint reality check. Obviously, I strongly agree with Jay there, something that you can sort of cue or have physiology based during sleep somehow also. So you can sort of, at least a dream sign that comes common in your dreams, you know, deceased relative. But also actually train in collaboration with that critical thinking. I don't know if anybody can see my profile picture, I put it there. But we had a person come into Lucidity Institute. I remember it clearly. I was doing tech support for the Nova Dreamer mask. And the person said, my mask doesn't work. I said, really? What's going on here? I don't mind fixing it if it does. He says, well, the reality check button, when you press the little button on the front, it doesn't flash the LED that it's supposed to. I said, oh, really? You know, I tried it out, and I started to have a guess what might be going on here. And I said, well, it seems to work pretty well now. He goes, yeah, but it didn't work the other day when I tried it. I said, okay. And you have to be respectful, obviously. But I said, what was happening when you were dressing? And he goes, well, I was walking around with a mask on and I pressed it like 5 times and it didn't work. And I smiled, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just said, wow, okay. Hey, leave me a message next time it happens, because it seems to be working well. So I think that person got the message, maybe in more ways than one. But that how do we develop sort of critical thinking that, oh my goodness, even in waking state, that dream wasn't like typical waking perspective reality. The guy's walking around with a mask on, he's going to like knock himself out or something. I'd say there must be some like apps, or maybe Elevate or one of these kind of smart apps. Is there any that anybody know about that develop critical thinking? And then that in collaboration with reality test might be a pretty interesting mix.
I mean, I
Just
do
a
like
thought.
Dash's idea about kind of like you have to kind of say, was this real or not? Like, I think that is an element that we don't do very much, and that does kind of get at that.
No, but I mean actually training it like you do a workout if you're
Yeah.
going to go do a swim competition. How do you work out like critical thinking?
I wonder if it's worth talking to some people who work with like people with psychotic disorders, because like I'm sure they teach techniques for that. Like they probably have some things.
I think maybe the issue there, Craig, is like whether you can really do that. So like lucid dream frequencies associated with stuff like creativity, and I don't know about critical thinking exactly, but so then the question would be, well, if I induce creativity in somebody, or like make them more creative, or make them more critical thinking, more of a critical thinker, then will they have more lucid dreams? I think that's what you're saying.
Well, just sort of training yourself to be in a certain state. I mean, biofeedback, which I also design and work with, it does it very well. It's sort of, maybe not 100%, but let's say ballpark 1 out of 10. It gives you accurate of what state you're in. So let's say when you get into a critical state, you get a little like beep. Or you just do training to get yourself into the state, and then you kind of consciously know when you're in it and when you're not, and then you set yourself in it with the reality check at night and when you fall asleep.
Yeah, this is actually, I was going to mention this earlier to Nathan's point, that I agree. Sometimes I wonder if reality checks are worth it at all, because it seems like that they are working in situations where you might have recognized that you were dreaming anyways. There's a cool paper a couple of years ago about what triggers lucid dreams, and they do like a survey, and it's like, oh, it's about, some people say it's bizarreness, and some people say it's these like heightened emotional things, and some people say they noticed something or a reality check, and they argue that the common thing among all of them is that you were in some critical thinking state like that, Craig, or something prior to that decision. And so really that's what you're trying to induce. So I agree with what you're both saying, and I think that that's pretty much what we were going at with the targeted memory reactivation version of inducing lucid dreams that we had, where it was like we just told people to be reflective and kind of this like mindfulness induction procedure, and we associated a cue with that and tried to induce that state. And so yeah, I don't know if you know, I think reality checks give you something, even if it's just changing your waking reflection that happens during sleep. But I agree with people that it's not good.
I mean, it could be a rudimentary metacognitive exercise. And I wonder if we know more about the neural correlates and biochemistry of metacognition, and can we train more of its faculties? Can we reverse engineer it? Can we like tinker with it?
Mm-hmm.
That could be key. Something like perspective memory and a lot of the sort of preparation techniques basically touch on metacognition in one way or another. And so maybe there's a slightly more direct way.
Yeah, so I'm like designing this study right now, actually. Like we're doing awake back to bed, and we're having people do specific tasks when they go back to sleep, and we're seeing if one of them is more useful than the other. So wholeheartedly agree. And so we're picking out these tasks right now, and I think that we have some good ones. But yeah, don't worry about communitying that one. I'll report back because we're doing that in the lab right now, and I think it's the right. I guess it's obvious because I'm running the study, but I think it's the right way to go.
What if we combine something like Dash's like Chrome extension with something with like a cue that told you like something might have happened, like kind of you're browsing on Twitter and then you hear a beep and then you have to say like, did anything weird just happen? Like I think that could be an interesting augmentation to the TMR thing.
And then when it beeps, is there like sometimes preceding dream check, but sometimes not.
Yeah. Sometimes there's been a weird tweet that popped up right before the beep, and sometimes there isn't, and it's like half and half. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think that gets at. So one of the tasks that I want to do in the study is a reality monitoring test, which is like traditionally is showing somebody a stimulus and then saying, "Did we recently show you this? Do you, or did you recently imagine this?" So you have to reflect on: was it something that was in my head, or was it something that I perceived in an external world? And that what you mentioned, Nathan, is like kind of getting at that in a much quicker, more subtle way. So I think and the neural mechanisms behind those things are overlapping with lucidity. So I think it's a promising.
And my hope would be if you kind of train people to do that task, if you can give people really good practice doing reality monitoring and you associate it with a cue, maybe then you can make them do it even when they're totally asleep.
Remy, can you talk more about the imagination part that you said?
So sorry, Jay, what'd you say?
Daniel, did you mean the creativity part?
No, you said something about whether you're whether you're imagining it or it happens, right?
Yeah. So reality monitoring is a task or a thing that we're doing all the time. Like, is this something that I'm experiencing, or is this something that was like, I'm using working memory, right now to like pick up my phone. I need to remember where my phone was. And so there's these internal things in my head, representations that are not, that are different from external. And reality monitoring is like trying to separate those things out. So we're kind of doing it all the time. And people that like have schizophrenia have deficits in this. And so the tasks to measure that in the lab is they'll show me a bunch of stimuli. They'll show me a bunch of animals, and they'll ask me, is this a living animal or not? And then they'll also have me imagine some animals. And so I'm imagining an elephant, and then I see a fox. And then like 30 minutes later, they show me a fox, and then they say, did I ask you, was this something that you imagined in your head earlier, or is this something that you saw physically on the screen? And you have to reflect on if it's something that you generated in your mind during the imagination task, or something you saw in person, or on the screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just wanted to have more details. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a semi-satisfying, I think, relation to lucidity. There's a new one that I'm way more excited about. It's perceptual reality monitoring, which is much more about in the moment is what you're seeing in your head or something on the screen. And there's some clever designs that somebody just came out with this last year about that. And so those are the things I think that maps onto lucidity. I think is like you're trying to tell what you're currently looking at is something that is external or something that you generated inside your head, which is strange, but
I can't imagine what that looks like. What the experiment looks like.
What were that you mentioned? There were some clever designs. I'm curious what one of those is.
It's like they use these gratings on the screen. So this is kind of a common thing at stimulus and psychology experiments. They have these really boring stimuli just because they're well controlled. So say there's a circle with
like an oddball experiment.
Yeah, used in some of those, I think. So say it's like a 45-degree angle on the screen, and they'll have a stimulus at a 45-degree angle. And then they say, while you're looking at that, imagine a opposite angle. So imagine something at 35 degrees instead of 45 degrees. And then so you're imagining something that's 35. There's something on the screen that's 45. And then they kind of like fuzzy this out at different amounts. And then they like kind of ask you to say what angle you see on the screen. This is really difficult for me to do, sorry, with words, and I don't know if it's that clear, but basically what they're getting at is sometimes there's something in your head that you're imagining, and if the angle on the screen is fuzzy enough, you kind of project what is on your head onto the screen. You say, oh, I saw a 35-degree angle, but you didn't. It's because the screen was really fuzzy and you kind of put it on there. And so it's things like that I'm not explaining well that they get at you making these judgments. So
Interesting.
I'll find the link and I'll post it.
Yeah, Bill, it sounds like something you could tap into with your Exploratorium background there.
I know. Well, I used to do. I used to spend no end of time talking to scientists to exactly exhibitize stuff like this.
the person, the author recently did a YouTube talk on it too, so I'll send you that. And it's like a 30-minute talk.
Oh, thank you, Remington.
Yeah, maybe I'll spill out a few summary notes of like what I was thinking about after like hearing the past like 20 minutes or so of discussions around reality checks. I think some of the themes are there's not like a one size fits all. Like it should be very like plausible that, you know, this thing might not be real, or it, you know, it might be in my head. So I can imagine some kind of you know, maybe it's the Chrome browser that has you know, some kind of reality check in there, and then like maybe there's a follow-up one too where it's like hold your nose and like try that reality check, or, you know, look at time, look away, look back again, or maybe it's like the finger through the hand. Because I think like sometimes the reality checks get stale too, right? If you're using the same one for too long, you might need to like try a different reality check. So maybe there's like a 1-2 punch where it like prompts you to question reality, and then you do like a deeper reality check. And I also like the idea of maybe as a follow-up, you know, kind of experiment, stacking on top of the reality check app, having some kind of way to boost metacognition, whether that's a well-timed galantamine dose, maybe it's like some wake back to bed technique, but some way to be on the reality checks, boost your metacognition, so you're more likely to question the reality in your dream too. So it seems like there's you know, like some complementary techniques that could be combined, and like maybe that's the same study, maybe it's like a follow-up study.
I have a feeling this is a terrible idea, but with a well-placed stimulation device, you can create a visual flicker in your visual field that you can just throw people off with and test or something. I don't know. Like, can we create, you know, non-drug induced illusions, hallucinations of sorts, or visual aberrations or something that could be really like making people question if they're, you know, awake or sleeping? You know, push
I've
the
done
boundary a little.
that, and like you can do it. It has like a tactile sensation, so it's
Yeah,
like
that's a
very
problem.
clear that kind of you're getting an electric shock. But you could do it.
Oh, I've done that.
Yeah.
You're right. I think it's too noticeable physically to work, but yeah,
Although
wonder
I
if
don't know,
there's similar
you
things.
could do it at very, very low intensity. Like that could act like, that could
Actually,
work.
that might
Like you
work
could,
better. If
yeah.
you're not sure if it's happening, you're like,
Hmm.
something changed. Interesting. All right, something to think about.
Yeah, I feel like you could do stuff like that if you had very good AR. But there's nothing really. They don't like Google Glass never really happened, and there's nothing really to do that with yet.
Yeah, I was thinking about AR. Like, could you
Yeah.
create a more basic, you know, glasses that just, you know, just have like a rudimentary projection on the glass or something? I mean, Bill, this might be up your alley, but yeah, I don't know. What about a hat with a micro projector where you just like suddenly flash things on the wall or something?
Sometimes it's just also
An intermittent laser pointer. Sorry, go on.
sometimes it's just important to keep it simple as well, because we're trying to, I mean, I'm all for gamifying it, but like sometimes when you make it so complex, it's like I guess all you have to do is just like break out of the conceptual train of thought that you're constantly in while you're in the waking state, and actually take time to do this state check, right? Myself included, sometimes I'm just like skipping through it, and like then might as well not do it at all, right? So it's like, how can you actually break out of this like conceptual world that you're in, loaded with all these afflictions that you have, and actually like do this on a regular basis, right?
You know
I
what's a
think
little
that's
bit,
really what's important.
you know what's a little bit kind of chicken and the egg about that though, is that I didn't take any of them seriously until I had my first lucid dream. Like, so you kind of need the lucid dream. It's such a dumb question until you've had a lucid dream, honestly. For me, it was like, and then it really,
Yeah, right.
that's what brought me out of it and started taking the reality check seriously. And I had more lucid dreams as a function of that, I think, but definitely to kickstart it. So it's kind of like, how do you get people to have that first one, which
Exactly,
is a different question versus having people increase their frequency, you know?
Also, Remington, Greg here, without jarring their, you know, basis of reality. I just want to add a little word here for On the list of techniques that I published at Lucidity that went all around the world, and it's most of the ones we know now. I added on since then because I saw it happen way too much for my liking. At the bottom, stay grounded and stay connected with life and stay more or less sane. And you know, there's a few specific ways: eat well, sleep enough, stay socially connected, as probably perhaps the most important technique, because I saw people sort of question reality check, wearing, you know, is this a dream t-shirts, or starting to do very like ungrounded things, some ending up in institutions and this and that. So I don't think we necessarily want to induce too much questioning too often, or at least sort of maybe screen the participants a little bit and watch them a little more closely. If it's just us, well, know yourself and then mention it. That's how I deal with it. But just a point to consider.
Yeah, I mean, if you ended up with any, you know, notable outcomes of what predicted that for people, I would love to hear more about that at some point, because
or just as a factor to consider. As an example, I think unfortunately this is like a way out data point, so probably not the average. But that shooter at the Colorado Theater said, "Oh yeah, I was doing lucid dreaming check, and he thought he was in a dream and nothing would happen." And so just to give you like a super extreme case of someone who gets ungrounded. So it's just,
yeah, I'm aware of that data point. I don't know about that one, but
the general trend, though, I've seen a dozen times of people sort of losing it because they got too far out. So that's a far out data point, but the general principle, I want to mention it just because I think it's pretty key. In fact, it's one of the reasons I sort of changed how I talk and speak and market lucid dreaming.
Yeah, super valid. Thanks for bringing that up. So we have like roughly 8 minutes left in the scheduled time. I'm sure we can spill over that if people want to, you know, stay in chat. Jay's got his fur baby. I don't know if you guys saw my
Your actual baby?
My wake back to bed baby, as I call him, because he wakes us up at night. He gives me more lucid dreaming sense.
What is that?
This is Freckle. She's a Siberian forest cat. Say
Oh
hi,
my
Freckle.
God, look at that
Cute.
thing.
She's
That looks
adorable.
expensive. I like that.
She is hypoallergenic. Yes, expensive, but necessary. My best friend is allergic to cats.
Is she really hypoallergenic? That's unbelievable with all that.
Oh yeah, there's a few species that are hypoallergenic.
Oh, because
And
I
they
always
have
thought
to-
they were. I always thought they were hairless in that case. You know.
Well, those I think happen to also be one of the species, but the thing that happens is it's an enzyme in their saliva,
Exactly.
and they lick themselves, and then it gets on the hairs, and the hairs get everywhere. So any cat that is hairless is just less likely to cause.
That was what I thought mattered. I didn't realize there's actually cats with different saliva, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Some cats have less of that enzyme. There we go. Oh my God, that's amazing. Yes.
They are not hyperallergenic for
Oh,
that
good
reason
to
that
know.
you're saying. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
not.
Or is this
No?
a dream? This could all just be a dream.
in a matter of 30 seconds, I've seen the cat with the most hair and the least hair in my entire life.
Yeah.
Such an extreme situation.
Yeah, we must be dreaming.
Yeah.
Should we, like mentioned at the beginning, I want to make sure we come away with a few clear next steps. So I can at least suggest a few, but want input from the group too. To me, it makes sense. Like this Chrome browser, like reality check thing definitely resonated with me as kind of an easy way to get started. And for us, like to build some structure about like, how do we do these distributed studies at scale, as far as like, how do we log lucid dreams? How do we organize? Like that seems like a lightweight way to do it. You know, it's not like no effort, and you know, hopefully Dash will find some collaborators in the group to help develop that Chrome extension if it's of interest to people. But I think it'd be cool to release that and, you know, have that as kind of like a first experiment, just to kind of like start flexing the muscles of doing these studies. And then whether it's like adding on some metacognition technique on top of that, or like maybe it's getting more into galantamine studies, or maybe it's something else, but we could talk about like follow-on studies from there. And one more quick thing, I think as a next step, like regardless of what research study we proceed with as the first one, I like the idea of starting a Google Doc, and I'm happy to start it, as a place to collaborate. And I could share the link to people that joined this, and I'll probably share it in the Discord too, where it's just a place that we could kind of, collaborate on a plan of record together on like, what are the objectives of the study? How would we structure it? And like a place to add comments and suggested edits together. I've seen that work well in the past. So I'll pause there if there's any thoughts on like, what do people think is a good study to get started, and how do we stay organized after this? Or does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, it's a good starting point as any, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of all in on this Chrome browser idea too. I think it's great for many reasons. I think it's a really cool idea because of how easy it is, and also how you could also get. It's really easy for people to report like how much time they've been on Chrome then, and so you can get a lot of other measurements kind of built in. I also like it because, so I don't know how much I would worry about sort of thinking about a full design. I kind of like it because it's like whenever you want to use it, just start using the browser, and then just kind of letting people stop whenever they want, and you can add things. And then so then it's less of a I know it's kind of how Nathan is running some studies now. It's less of a like start and then get 30 people and do this thing, which would be really difficult in this situation. And it's more like, are people that are using the browser tab having a lot of lucid dreams, and you can just kind of look at whenever people start and stop. So I feel like that would be good.
Yeah, it's more like a lightweight study, or just basically building a potential tool and putting it out there and seeing if there is any positive response, right?
Yeah, it's perfect for pilot stuff, because then you're not really saying like, you're not really doing explicit tests even. You're just kind of looking at what happens when people, a couple people use this browser tab, this Chrome extension, and they found it was really useful. Should we design a more formal study? But you're just kind of seeing if these things kind of work just kind of in a pilot version or something.
And then in that case, if it's start and stop at your own pace based on how you're using the Chrome extension, I think the main thing to solve for is how are we reporting lucid dreams. Obviously we're not going to verify with eye movements at home, with the polysomnography. So I think it's more about like, what is the right channel to submit? Like, yeah, I had a lucid dream, this night or not this night. So we can think about that in that shared document. Like, is it, do we submit a Google form when we have a lucid dream with like maybe filling out some like very lightweight characteristics of the dream, or maybe it's just yes, no, but we can like clarify those details in that shared Google Doc. And then, yeah, I like the idea of having an easy place to start that we can build on. Is I think always a good way to get some momentum going.
I wanted to mention an idea for study, and I was late, so I don't know whether the studies have that already been done, but only done very limitedly would go. But it's a census-initiated lucid dreaming styled, because it's as a technique, it's fairly easy. You just cycle through the census, and the tech that could be used is audio. Like, for example, Monroe Institute has a census-initiated audio that has already binaural beats, and it's a timed audio. So it's very easy to implement, in a sense that everybody would be listening to the same CD with the same music for the same amount of time, and would have to interrupt sleep again. But just a thought. And it's been done by Dr. Aspie. I know Jay interviewed him. So he's done this study once and found that it was just as effective as mild.
Really? Oh, yeah. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
So what's the thing that you want to add to it? Because has it been done, or are you saying to maybe do it again? Or
yeah, it has been done. As far as I know, it's been done once, and I haven't read, but I'm not sure if we change it. But even repeating it, I'm suggesting it because it's easily done at home, and he in fact done that. He actually did a very, very broad study involving a huge amount of participants over the internet. That I'm assuming that's what we're aiming to do. And so it doesn't require any lab or anything. I don't think he used the audio, so that would be a different thing that I'm suggesting that we could do. And we could use already existing audio. I just purchased it a couple of days ago and tried it. So it cues you. You don't even have to remember anything. So it's perfect for beginners, who's somebody who never done any lucid dreaming, because one thing to remember the cycle, and the other thing somebody tells you in your ears what you need to focus your attention on and for how long. So it's perfect as far as standardizing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think audio in general is a good quality due to that accessibility too. Like if you think of those binaural beats, you have to be willing to wear like earbuds at night, which I don't do, but I could be convinced to do it if there's lucid dreaming implications.
This is done after sleep interruptions. So you wake up for 10 minutes, you go back to bed, put on the headphones and fall asleep with them maybe on your back. So they're not as, and that's done closer to the morning. So you already slept through your cycles.
Yeah. No, I think in general, like that hits the mark for accessibility for sure. If like it's using somebody's mobile phone along with some kind of headphones and audio, like that's a good category for us to explore for sure. And like maybe that's a good one to combine with these reality checks too over time. So it's kind of combining two things that are pretty accessible.
I mean, at Lucidity, one of the other functions not so many people know about, you can connect it to the Nova Dreamer or operate it, is called Dream Speaker. And there's not too many of them out there, probably a few hundred. But it would play overnight cues. Those ones were specifically triggered by physiology, when the Nova Dreamer would recognize, it would send a signal to the dream speaker. But I've experimented with, let's just say, a little more brute force of playing an overnight audio cue with roughly 90-minute timed, friendly comments or some kind of binaural or different kinds of audio. It seems interesting. It's not a small study. I mean, you have to really isolate specific, what type of beat, who is it, when, are they going to participate, which REM period, a lot of factors, but a good one. I like it.
Is this in part what the Northwestern University app does? Basically, it's a specific pre-trained cue.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it plays overnight. What is there any way to trigger, or it's just timed?
So I think it's some intervals or some time delay.
Yeah, like the REM
I don't have Android, so I haven't been able to try it, but
Yeah, so our current version uses a time delay, and then we're launching pretty soon one that takes data from a Fitbit and figures out when you're in REM sleep and does it when you're in REM.
when do we get an Aura API that everybody can access and use?
Yeah, we actually, I'm the product manager on the team that owns the Aura API. So we have we have an open API that has all the metrics that are accessible in the Aura mobile app. We don't have as much of like the real-time use cases unlocked yet. So it's retrospective right now, but we are I can say that we're working towards that, because like there's a bunch of partner use cases that would benefit from real-time or near real-time data. So we awesome. Got a pretty good API, but it's going to get better in like upcoming year. We actually have a team focused on it now. Before it was like rolled into this group with a broader scope, and now we got what we call the partner squad that is more squarely focused on that kind of stuff.
That is wonderful news.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you need early access people to test it out, you have some people in the audience here that might be interested.
For sure. I legit welcome that. Any kind of developer feedback we can get is welcomed. It's kind of like difficult to get sometimes, so definitely welcome that.
Craig, I see a good question for you in the chat.
Yeah, Craig, I had to ask if there's if you've heard anything about a Nova Dreamer 2.
Oh, sorry guys, I was playing with my phone here, but listening intently. Yes, there is one that exists. LaBerge has been fooling around. I have a number of my own variations of the same. Nova Dreamer 3, 4, 5, and like 10. I don't use the name because I find that I never liked the name originally. I had a much better one originally, so that's a whole other discussion. But I know that LaBerge had about a dozen made and uses them at the workshops. I guess if you go to Maui, or where is it, Big Island, wherever he holds his workshops in Hawaii, and pay an extra big sum. You can try the actual masks out. And I don't know how much I'm super strong on the masks. The technology needs better, like more improving with some of the things we've said tonight. You know, maybe stimulation methods, maybe sensing methods, and probably my guess is combination, because just alone, sort of this SILD is SSID or any kind of external trigger is only going to be so useful. As a little hint, I think I've published this, and I've certainly said it a bunch during on interviews and media and stuff. I use a sort of tricky one, a physiology. I don't know if we could turn this into a product. I like to give things away. That's why I gave away all the techniques at Lucidity that are now all around the world. But I'll give this one, I'm glad about. I just use the bathroom check. So, you know, drink of water before bed or something like it. You know, you have to choose your amount so you don't lose your whole night's sleep. But then your intent, like the Nova Dreamer worked well for the flashing lights or the sound, whichever. And actually we hooked up temperature triggers. You know, I burnt my finger at the start with the beta test. But it works well when you actually practice the skill mentally of every time I see my light. So you actually really have to set an intention to it. So that's really crucial. So I don't know. There's different ways that you can sort of use mental techniques alongside with it. As for Nova Dreamer 2, according to LaBerge, it's been almost available for about 20 years.
Yeah.
So he could probably get one, but if somebody wants to develop or work on that kind of stuff, he can talk to me and we can see if something makes sense. I've got all the algorithms and I know all the science and everything.
I think
Right.
the next time we use eye movement for REM detection, we should go by way of the muscles around it or something.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of these Kickstarter masks actually use the EOG and EMG.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it's a little bit of a buckshot kind of approach for knowing when you're dreaming. There's, I think, a 10 physiology measure, maybe even like Fitbit based or Aura, I'm not sure could really get it, but it'll be better. A 10 physiology, now you can tell like right when you're dreaming in a few states, but you don't want to also be wearing like octopus gear all night because your sleep's not normal. I have lots of ideas around that, but I love the discussion. It's interesting.
Craig,
Nova Dreamer 2.
Craig, I really would like to know what the original name was that you had.
Yes.
I really am hung up on that you
Oh,
need to
okay. You like
yeah.
Nova Dreamer or you don't?
No, I have no stance on Nova Dreamer. I'm just curious about the name that you thought was better.
Well, I said Omni Dreamer. That's what I was pushing for. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this because it's recorded, but forgive me, Stephen. Stephen said, we can't have Omni Dreamer because that's like the end. You're going to kill the person with that name. I was like, no, it's not. It's got the word Om in there. It's like connecting with the... We had this big discussion about it, and then I said, hey, whatever, I don't care.
Well,
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear the background on that. And I'm sure if, Stephen needs people to collaborate with to bring Nova Dreamer 2, 3, 4, to the out to the public, he'll probably find some willing collaborators in this group too. So maybe there's a way people in this community can help if he's ever open to it.
Yeah, I like the online web. I have a web page that does some of the things I think the Chrome does, and once it sort of gets together, I think we could maybe collaborate with that. It's got some pretty interesting functions outside of just sort of taking data. So we'll see.
Yeah, we hope to see you again in the next meetup.
Well, you're dreaming right now, so you'll have to do a reality check and see if I'm there. No, thanks for the invite. I don't want to be too crazy. I see Brian checking. No, thanks for a welcoming vibe, you guys. I enjoy the like-minded and interested people. I love the idea that I get the sense here and appreciating, I guess, maybe Brian's vibe. I'm not sure everybody's vibe. For people here are really keen on bringing it out, helping, getting it out there, not just milk the Silicon Valley multi-billionaire kind of keep it all proprietary kind of thing. That's, there should be some of that to grow maybe a business if it goes there, but I think lucid dreaming is for the masses. So with that intention, that's kind of where I've gone.
Nice.
Yeah, 100%. It's like something that it's like a secret that many people are not even aware about, or like something that they don't know they want to do. Like I didn't know I wanted to do it until I started lucid dreaming until starting in 2014. Now it's like, holy
Can't
shit,
get
I
enough.
can't believe like you can actually do this. And like I want more people to be able to do that. And I'm convinced like, 10, 20 years from now, we'll look back and be like, I can't believe more people were not lucid dreaming at this point. And yeah, I think hopefully technology can play a role, or like the more fundamental mental techniques. So no, it's exciting. I'm just like stating the obvious for people in this room, but it's definitely not obvious for a lot of people outside that they even want to lucid dream. So it's going to be exciting to see this grow. I think I've said it before, where it feels like a pile of dry wood that's waiting to catch a spark. Because like once you've had these lucid dreams that are so deep, it's mind blowing. So yeah, good discussion today. As noted, I'll start that shared Google Doc just so we have a place to collaborate, and I'll make sure to share that through email to the people that joined and RSVP'd, and I'll drop it in the Discord server too. Totally optional for anybody that wants to collaborate, but I just want to have a space where we can kind of capture ideas in a, kind of a shared format to have here's the plan and how we start. Here's, like future phases and how it could develop. Just kind of have like a planning document. And I am happy to at least like take a first draft at it, like mostly just kind of like building out a structure and like the sections and stuff. So we're not starting with a blank piece of digital paper, but yeah, I'll share a link to like a very rough draft when it's ready, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again for putting this together. It's amazing. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, always a lot of fun. And again, next event planning for April 20th. We'll talk all things cannabis, psychedelics, intersecting with lucid dreaming. Again, kind of in my mind that hits the supplement category in a way.
Just before Earth Day.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think there's a lot of fun discussion we'll have in the next one too. And obviously we'll keep the discussion going, on Discord and email, whatever other channels we have, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
All right. Good discussion.
Good to see you all.
Ready?
Bye all.
Later.